Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the holidays and adventures that surround them. I would just like to say thank you to Mason Rose, the sales and communication agency that represents some of the finest hotels around the world, for partnering with Travel Secrets, the podcast. Today, my guest is the wonderful Elizabeth Day. When I started Travel Secrets, I had a list of my top 10 guests that I wanted to interview, and you were number 1. So I am so honoured and privileged that you said yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm honoured and privileged that I was number 1 on that list.
You were number 1.
Let alone making that list, because you've told me who else is on that list, and I am, let's just say I'm deeply flattered, and it's so lovely to be here.
Well, your podcast, How to Fail, is my go-to podcast.
Thank you.
I'm in your colours
You
today.
are.
I literally
Thank
am
you so
in my
much.
Me&M How to Fail podcast colours. You are the most amazing, amazing author. And I told you before we started that Friendaholic was my go-to book for all my friends when it came out.
Thank you.
I absolutely adore it, and all of the others, to be honest. But Friendaholic was just fantastic. Your Substack is sensational.
Oh my gosh,
I love
you're
it.
so nice.
I'm a huge. I am literally a super fan.
I love that you have my Substack.
Oh,
Thank
it's brilliant.
you.
It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. And I tell all my friends and I share it, and
you're
I just
so
think it's
kind.
fantastic.
Thank you.
You recently went on holiday with our mutual friend Trini to Egypt, so I hope we're going to hear about that.
Oh yes, don't you worry.
And I read the most hilarious article about you saying that actually when you travel you are a monster. So I really want to hear about that. It was years ago.
Oh my goodness.
And it was talking about getting on a plane and not having your luggage above your head. And I just thought, this is hysterical. We've got to hear more about that. So welcome, lovely Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you for having me. Honestly, what a lovely introduction. And I'd forgotten I'd written that article. You've done amazing research.
Oh, I've done all my research, but I laughed out loud. It really, really made me giggle. I thought, if we ever go on a trip together, I'm booking her a seat and I'm booking her hand luggage and I'm booking her, hold luggage, not hand luggage. So before we go into your travel secrets, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how travel has impacted you.
Yeah, so actually I was born in Epsom, not far from where we're recording this podcast. And when I was 4, my family up sticks and moved to the north of Ireland. So we moved to just outside Derry. And at the time, it was quite an interesting place to live, let's put it like that, because it was still at the height of a sort of civil war. And that felt like my first big travel adventure in a way, because it was a completely different cultural background to exist in. And immediately I felt like I didn't fully belong because I've always spoken with this very English accent. Yeah. And so I think I got a sense of exploring difference and how important travel can be from a very early age from that salutary experience. And then growing up, it was an era before cheap flights. A flight was a big deal. Yeah. And so actually our family holidays were spent in a place called Portsalon, which was a beach a few hours drive from us. And we would pack up and we got a little self-catering, there was a self-catering series of cottages around the beach. And we would take our cat and build sandcastles. And it was very happy. And looking back on it, I'm very nostalgic for what feels like a much simpler time.
Yeah.
And then my mother, again, we were chatting before, is actually originally Swiss. And she was very, very keen that her children, so I'm one of 2, I've got an older sister, would have broad horizons and languages. And so from a young age, she really drilled home the importance of that, of being able to connect with people no matter where they're from. And when I was 7, she took me and my sister to Paris for 6 months. Oh, wow. And we went to school in Paris and came back totally fluent in French.
How wonderful.
And then that was a thing that we repeated again and again. And when I was 12, I went to Russia and learned Russian. And so I had lots of experiences like that where I think travel for me became something that was about understanding the world and how other people live in it. So I've never been scared of travel, but I think it's taken me a bit longer to understand the value of just a luxurious holiday where you don't have to learn a new language and you can just soak in the surroundings. I think for a long time, my idea of travel was very much dovetailed with
learning a language,
learning kind of hard work in an interesting way, but sort of adventure rather than relaxation. And I then had a gap year when I was 18, 19 in between school and university. And that was really the first time that I was able to curate my travel experience. And I went and lived in Cape Town for 6 months, worked for an NGO there, and I backpacked around Madagascar for a month. Oh, wow. So those are all really, really interesting, amazing experiences, some of which I will talk about today. Yeah. But that's sort of my background in terms of travel. I think I saw travel as distinct from holidays.
Yes, and actually it is. Because as you say, if you go on holiday, you just relax and have a good time. It's very different from the one that you had when you were a child. Do you speak French and Russian now?
I speak French. Russian I've almost entirely forgotten. But I can remember a few things. Like I can remember how to say Меня zовут, my name is, Как дела, how are you? Вы говорите по-русски, do you speak Russian?
Oh, you sound very Russian when you speak.
Oh, thank you. And my favourite word in Russian is достопримечательности, which just means monuments or heritage.
Oh, it sounds very romantic.
Doesn't it?
It sounds wonderful.
It's like my favourite Italian word is francobolli, which means stamps.
Francobolli. It sounds like spaghetti bolognese.
Yes.
But it's
so chic. Yeah.
You'll have to teach me a few words of Russian because my name is Russian, Tanya. So everyone says, oh, are you Russian? And I'd love to be able to say, yes, I am. So I need a few of those little sentences.
I'll teach you, don't worry.
Oh, let's get into your travel secrets. So what is the number one destination that you think everyone should go to once in their lifetime?
Well, I'm not just saying this because I've just come back, but Egypt. I was blown away by Egypt. I had one of the best holidays I've ever had in terms of the culture, the experiences, the people I was with. I was with our dear mutual friend Trini. She had organised this extraordinary trip going down the Nile in a traditional boat. It was so stunning. But the thing that really blew me away was the history and the ancient quality of that history and how much of it you can still see. So you can walk across flagstones that are sort of 3,000 years old to get into the burial temple of Queen Hatshepsut, this female pharaoh who I knew nothing about, who has been lost to history in so many ways, as happens with so many women. And you can learn that she led these expeditions into nearby Somalia, and she insisted that she was represented as a man in statues because people weren't used to the idea of a female ruler. And all of that is still there, it's still around you, let alone the pyramids in Giza, 4,000 years old, being able to go inside a burial chamber. It's like this magical construction. Incredible. It blew my mind, and it made me realise how much of who we are comes from that origin story. And so that's why I think everyone should go there, because it really puts into perspective how we live now and essentially our insignificance. Yeah. Because the Egyptian dynasties lasted for thousands of years, 7,000 years. So when you think about it, Cleopatra, who we all know of because of Shakespeare and Elizabeth Taylor, she is closer to our time than she was to the construction of the pyramids. So things like that just really made me think and marvel at the world and also at how advanced the ancient Egyptians were. You know, they developed the calendar, for instance, that they developed this entire language of communication through hieroglyphs. And the fact that we can still see so much of it, I was just buzzing every single day. And then that beautiful light, that winter sunlight that you get. It was freezing and I packed really badly because in my head... Yeah, I took breezy linens and sort of bikinis, and I then wished I'd done what Trini did, which was basically just stuff her bag full of Uniqlo thermals, because it was absolutely freezing, particularly in the morning and the evening. It got warmer the further south we went on the boat. But just the light, the quality of that light, and being able to get sunshine in deepest, darkest British winter, I think it's left me really energised for the year. So I've come back feeling really invigorated.
Yeah, and also looking back on all that history makes you feel, as you say, wow.
Yes.
It's just amazing.
Anything's possible,
Anything's
really.
possible.
I really did find it extraordinary.
Your Substack on Egypt is so fantastic. So anyone listening to this who does not subscribe has got to, because you do how to do Egypt, basically.
Yes.
And, you know, all the history and everything. But it is such a great guide to Egypt, and it's become such a popular destination, even though what's going on over, you know, in the vicinities, so many people are going. But it's quite scary because you think, well, where should I go and how should I go? And I think the boat is a wonderful thing to do.
Absolutely. The boat was just so peaceful and beautiful. And basically what happens, we went for 5 nights, and we had New Year's Eve on the boat, which is the best New Year's ever. But you get this sort of sense of time passing in a very sort of slow moving fashion as you go down the Nile, and you see sort of normal life along these fertile riverbanks. And then you stop off every day and they provide a guide who then takes you to these tombs and temples or treks through deserts that you wouldn't normally see. And then you end up in Aswan. And my one regret is that my husband Justin and I didn't have enough time to stay in Aswan, so we never saw it. So I just have to go back, basically.
Yes, you have to go
but
back.
I really do. But we basically did Cairo, Luxor, and then the boat, and it was utterly magnificent. And also, I loved the people that we met. There was a generosity of spirit and a humour that I really appreciated. The food was great, and even though, as you're right, it's a troubled region, I had so many people, when I started sharing pictures on Instagram and saying, I just can't get over this country, I had so many Egyptians saying, thank you so much for showing our country in this way, rather than how it's portrayed in the media.
Let's go on to your next travel secret. What is your most unexpected travel experience?
I've actually got a few here.
Oh, good.
But I think I'm
Excellent.
going to choose this one. So I used to be a staff feature writer for the Observer newspaper, and I occasionally had the immense privilege of getting to write a travel piece. And I got sent to the Caribbean island of Dominica.
Oh, yeah.
Not the Dominican Republic,
Republic.
Dominica. And they were just opening themselves up as an eco-tourist destination. And I thought, fabulous, Caribbean, yes, please. I don't know if you've been to...
No, I haven't.
It's a really unique place. It has a very strong energy, I found, and it's got volcanic springs, and it's where Jean Rhys, the novelist, was born and raised, and it's where she set part of her novel Wide Sargasso Sea, and I think she really nails the atmosphere. It feels sort of spiritual and sometimes a little oppressive. It just felt like there was a lot going on under the currents of that island. And at the same time, it's got this beautiful, lush vegetation and an incredibly healthy way of life. I think it's famous for having the most number of people who've reached 100
Oh, really?
on that island because they have such a healthy lifestyle. So it was an extraordinary place, and I got to sample these new eco-tourist destinations. And one of them was built by someone who had moved to Dominica from Tennessee, and he had imported lots of Tennessee oak, I think it was, and built, I don't know why he'd imported the wood. Should have been red flag number one. Anyway, and he had built this sort of eco-tourist venue, but it wasn't completely finished, so there were no windows or anything.
So really eco.
It was so eco. It was basically like backpacking.
A tent.
And I remember like walking into my room and all of the fittings, the fixtures and fittings in the bathroom had rusted because it was right next to this volcanic spring, and there was just so much humidity in the air.
With no windows.
And no windows, and this smell of kind of rotten eggs that you get from sulfuric springs. Anyway, this gentleman said, if you'd like to avail yourself of the spa facilities, you are very welcome. You know, we offer amazing massages by the springs. And he made it sound so great. So I was like, oh, I'd love one of those tonight. Thanks very much. And then I went down to the bar area at the allotted hour, and he was there again. And I said, oh, I'm here for my massage. He was like, if you just go on down and I'll be down in a minute. And he was doing the massage. And before he did the massage, he gave me one of those sheets where it's like, cross out anywhere you're not comfortable being massaged. Yeah. And I was in that very sort of precarious British situation of wondering what I should do in order to still be polite, but also have my back. I was like, should I cross out my vagina? should I cross out my breast, or was that like just taken as a given? It was so awkward.
Should have done like a triangle from here to here.
I know, just from the neck up.
Neck up.
Yeah.
Neck and feet.
I know. And then he came down and I think he insisted that I completely disrobe myself. And again, now being older, I wouldn't have done that. And then I got on this massage table, which was covered in sort of plastic sheeting to protect the actual table.
God,
so it was
stuck
deeply
to it.
uncomfortable and so unrelaxing, because essentially he was the sort of general manager and owner who'd greeted me, and now he was performing the
cocktails
massage
at night.
Yes, so that was very unexpected.
That's hilarious. Did he put a towel over you? I bet he didn't even. You
I don't think he did.
Start bollock naked for the whole thing.
It did teach me an important lesson about how people pleasing can actually get you into quite unsettling situations. And that was something I needed to learn. And nothing happened, thank goodness. And it was fine. I mean, it wasn't a relaxing massage, but it was so unexpected. And when you asked me this question, that's the thing that first came up. Yeah.
Well, there are many lovely eco resorts now in the world, and I'm sure I can send you to many of them.
Thank you, because it wasn't what I expected.
And you're actually going to go to one in Thailand in the summer, aren't you? So,
yes, I can't wait. We're going to go to Kamalaya in Koh Samui.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is. I haven't ever been, but so many clients and friends have been. So that's a wonderful, unexpected travel tale. What is your most overrated or underrated travel experience?
Oh, okay. I'm going to go overrated. And I hope I don't offend anyone. Hawaii.
Oh, interesting.
So I've had two experiences of Hawaii. The first was I was living in LA at the end of 2015. And again, I was still working for The Observer. And I got a chance to go to Hawaii very briefly to go and interview a woman who can communicate with dolphins. She's like a proper scientist. She's amazing. She's called Susan Casey. Shout out to Susan.
Oh, wow.
And because she lived on the island, she showed me around, and it was beautiful weather. And I had the most amazing 24 hours with her. And thought, gosh, if I ever fall in love again, because I was going through a divorce at the time, and if I ever get married again, I want to come here for my honeymoon. So fast forward several years later, I do meet Justin and we get married, but we actually get married during the pandemic. So we can't go on honeymoon, and it keeps getting delayed. And then finally we have a chance to go somewhere, and we choose to go to Hawaii. And I had such an image in my mind because of this experience I'd had with Susan years earlier. And we got there, and first of all, the weather was pretty terrible. It was really torrential rain several days. And the days that it wasn't raining, it was sort of weak sunshine with quite a healthy breeze. We were staying in this hotel that it was a small hotel, and it looked so nice online, but actually they were very pleased with themselves for very little reason. And it was just things like, we were paying quite a lot of money because it was our honeymoon. It was just things like, I love jasmine or green tea. I don't drink coffee, so I love that in the mornings. And they had some jasmine tea, but then ran out on day 2, and they're like, sorry, we don't have any more. And then that was it.
You didn't try and go to somewhere else on the island?
That was it. There was no more jasmine tea. Everything was served with so many microgreens. And this makes me sound, again, like the travel monster we described in the introduction. I also love avocado on toast. What I hate is when someone makes it into a paste. Just have the avocado.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was, I don't know, the food was slightly disappointing. And it also had a tiny pool, and they blasted really loud music around the pool every single day.
Long.
And so it's just this combination of factors. And then we did the route to, now I can't remember, I told you I can't remember anything. It's described as one of the sort of informal 7 wonders of the world. And it's a driving route that you do, and you see lots of amazing waterfalls when you go along this route. But we did it, and it was on a day that it was raining, so it wasn't
Didn't
ideal.
look great.
No, but it was just, you felt like you're going on a sort of dual carriageway with loads of traffic because loads of other people are doing the route. And then occasionally you'd see a waterfall. I was like, I've seen waterfalls like this in Northern Ireland. Like, that's just no point.
Is it a bit like an Elvis film where you have all the American tourists?
Yes,
sort of...
it was so busy. That was the other thing. It was unbelievably busy because I think we went in December, so high season, so many people going away trying to get winter sun. So for whatever, and it was just lots of strip malls. And because it was so busy, it was incredibly difficult to get dinner reservations anywhere. I hadn't planned in advance. I didn't think we'd have to, but we actually should have booked like a month in advance to get the nice dinner places. And so it just didn't turn out as we expected. And I think it's vastly overrated. Having said that, I've only experienced one part of it. And I'm sure that the smaller islands and with better weather, and if you have a local guide like Susan Casey,
if you meet someone who can communicate with dolphins,
exactly, then I'm sure it's amazing.
Actually, it's interesting because Minnie Driver was on the podcast last week.
I need to go with Minnie Driver.
No,
I think is what we've realised, because I really trust her. She's been on How to Fail, and I thought she was wonderful. And we went for lunch afterwards, and the way that she speaks about surfing and being at home in the water, and that's why she loves Malibu. Like, I completely. If she showed me around, I feel like I completely get it.
And she would take you to the smaller islands.
And you go
to the waterfalls behind, where the ladies used to go and bathe and everything. So
that's what I wanted. I wanted like that film Cocktail.
Yes.
Where they frolic in the waterfall. That's what I wanted, but for some reason we just didn't see any of that.
And no Tom Cruise.
And no Tom Cruise.
Although you were on a honeymoon, so you weren't looking for Tom Cruise.
No, I had my very own. Although Justin loves Tom Cruise, so he would appreciate that reference. And Justin got ill as well, and so like he just wasn't that. He wasn't sort of tip-top condition. Anyway, Hawaii for whatever reason.
Great. Let's go on to your best meal. Let's talk about food and drink. It's so important as far as travel is concerned, as far as our lives are concerned. Where do you like eating? What do you like eating? Where have you had your best meal? Cocktail? Let's just talk about food and drink.
Oh, thank you, heaven. I find it so hard to whittle it down because I love food and drink. And I don't have particularly refined tastes in food. I just like really good food that can be that is simple. So I love an amazing Caesar salad. And I love healthy food. I love sort of vegetables, even though I do eat meat as well. I love a great steak and some great fries on the side, a plate of salmon. That's me happy. I also like snacks. And so there's my favourite restaurant in London is the Dover, and they literally have a snacks menu, which is like lobster rolls and cheese on toast, things like that. Love that. So my favourite meals, there's one in particular I want to talk about, but my favourite meals generally are ones with friends.
Yeah.
And very often on holidays, and not when we go out, they're when we might be sharing a wonderful villa and we've all pitched in and we've just bought amazing local produce at the farmer's market down the road, or foreign supermarkets, which I'm obsessed with. And we kind of open a jar of cornichon if we're in the south of France, and we just, and have like little bits of saucisson. And so those are some of my favourite meals. Yeah. And in my 20s, I was very good friends with someone whose parents had sold their London home and bought a sort of dilapidated vineyard near Carcassonne. And so we spent, a group of us in our 20s, we spent a lot of our summer holidays going to this vineyard and seeing it kind of being built up. And some of my favourite meals are from there, where Andrew, my friend, would just get an amazing piece of steak and put it on the barbecue. And they were so fun. And obviously there'd be lashings of amazing wines.
It wasn't Andrew Nichols.
No, but his name is Andrew Nutter. So it is Andrew N.
Because I've got friends, Andrew Nichols and his husband, who did exactly that. A vineyard outside Carcassonne. And they built the whole thing up again.
No, it's an amazing thing to have witnessed. And they really did work very hard. And now they produce great wine. And they're called Chateau Jacques Saint Alba. And they do a great, Andrew will hate it when I say this. They do a great rosé. That's not their best wine, but I think it's great. Anyway, so those meals have a real place in my heart. But I think my favourite meals of all time, and there's two of them, have taken place in Los Angeles.
Oh, right.
One of them was in the Chateau Marmont. And that, for me, again, is like perfect food. Truffle fries, like just straightforward.
Good burger.
And I love the atmosphere. I love the atmosphere of old Hollywood, 1920s. There's so much history in those walls. And the reason I picked this particular meal, and I can date it almost precisely, it was September 2018, is because I was out there writing my book, How to Fail. And Justin and I had been dating for 6 months, and he came out to join me for 4 days. And we went for dinner at the Chateau Marmont, and it's the first time we said we loved each other.
Oh,
So I really remember that. So, and it was such a special, beautiful meal, and I was so happy. And then the second one was also with Justin in Los Angeles, which has a sadder context in that Los Angeles is like my spiritual home, and I go back there whenever I can. And we had chosen to do fertility treatment at the clinic there. We'd chosen to do a round of egg donation. I've had years of fertility issues. And that round failed, and we needed to do something that would make us feel like ourselves again. And Justin booked a table at the Sunset Tower Hotel. And he managed to score the most incredible table. And it was right next to a window in its own little corner of that, again, sort of historic chic restaurant on these velvety banquettes. Lovely. And again, we had an extraordinary meal because it started with an amazing martini, which I hadn't been able to drink for months leading up to that point. Yeah. And then it was just really good, simple food done so well, executed with such grace by the staff. And we had brilliant conversations, and we really talked about what we saw happening next and how our future might look if we chose not to pursue more fertility treatment, which is ultimately what we ended up doing. And so again, that's one of my favourite meals of all time because of what it represented and because of the heart with which I remember it.
Yeah, how wonderful. And I agree with you. Simple, lovely food with great people is what it's all about, I think. When I had Ruthie Rogers on the podcast, who I adore, who owns the River Cafe, you know, she was talking about her best meal, and it was when her and Richard were on the Ponte Vecchio or somewhere like that in Florence, and they just had bread with olive oil and tomato smeared over it.
Oh
and
my gosh.
It just sums everything up to me. You know, the tomatoes taste like tomatoes in Italy, and the olive oil, I'm sure, was absolutely superb. So
actually, that's just reminded me, of another amazing meal.
Good.
Because I also love the River Cafe. I think it does the best food in London. And it's an Italian. I've got 2 Italian experiences. I love Italian food and I love Italy. And I first started going there as a teenager. I was so obsessed, I made my parents go on holiday to Italy one year. And I went to the travel agent, because there were still travel agents there on the high street, and picked up lots of brochures. And I did all the research. I was like, we should go here. It's Artemino. And I remember this so vividly, Tanya. For £400, we could go. We got flights, a rental car, accommodation in this beautiful self-catering place for a family of 4.
Wow.
So we went. That was my first experience.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And I remember tasting gnocchi for the first time. Exquisite. The first time I went to Venice was on an art history trip as a teenager. And again, I had pizza in Venice that was unlike any other pizza I'd ever tasted. And then this summer just gone, Justin and I did an amazing road trip, which is another travel secret in that I highly recommend it. It was so fun. And that sense of forward momentum, we did it from Brittany all the way down through France to Cannes, stopping off en route, then across the border to Italy. And we ended up in the Villa San Michele, which I think is one of the greatest hotels
so beautiful,
ever.
Really exquisite.
Exquisite. And I ate a caponata that first night.
Oh, what's a caponata?
It's this, it's sort of stewed vegetables like aubergine, olives, capers in this like rich tomato sauce that is tangy, and sort of there's a sweetness to it, but a vinegary quality. It was so good.
Oh, good. Well, when I go to the Villa San Michele, I shall make sure I have that.
I'm salivating remembering it, so you definitely have that.
So lovely. Yeah. How wonderful. I agree with everything you've just said.
Aww.
And I'm going to definitely go and order that when I go next to Florence. I will do.
And get a Bellini there as well.
Oh, yes. And also, one of my travel tips is if you go to Venice and you can't necessarily afford to go to Harry's bar, you have to visit, because it is the place to go. But just sit at the bar and have a Bellini. And then you get the whole experience. Yeah. But if you want to eat at Harry's bar, then you have to ask for the table in the corner, which is the number 1 table.
Thank you for that hot tip.
Hot tip for Venice. Wow. Let's go on to your best travel tip. What's your best travel tip or your travel secret?
I think my best travel tip is last minute upgrades. So I tend to book an economy flight I always book BA because just
The
in
points,
the
to make
points,
sure
so like
you keep
everything.
your card.
Exactly. And I found that if I book an economy flight and then a week, even like a couple of days before I fly, it will very often give an option for an unbelievably good value upgrade. And I've done that successfully for the last, I would say, like 4 or 5 flights I've had.
Yeah.
So for something like LA, it makes a difference to me now. Like now in my 40s, and I'm 5'11", and LA, the jet lag can be tricky to navigate. It's so worth it for me to be able to spend that little extra on a last minute upgrade on the way back, and then hopefully get some sleep.
Yeah.
So that, I think, would be my top travel tip.
Yeah, I mean, I always will book a premium and economy just to make sure.
Yes.
But then that extra upgrade is always really worthwhile at the last minute to do.
And Justin gave me a very good tip, which is when you're confronted with the amount it is to upgrade, divide it by the number of hours that you're on that flight. Because it will often end up being like £50 an hour, which obviously is an expense. And I feel incredibly privileged that I can do that. But it works out quite well. And the return on investment is pretty good. Like you're going to have less jet lag and you're going to be able to get some sleep.
Yeah. I mean, when I come back from New York, I always go on the day flight. People say, oh, that's such a waste, but I love a day flight.
Yes.
I listen to podcasts, I watch films, and when you get back, it's time to go to bed and you've stayed awake because actually that night flight back from New York is a nightmare. It's only 5 hours.
You don't get a chance.
And you don't get a chance to sleep at all. So
I totally agree with you. I love a day flight.
A day flight is my top tip.
Justin's top tip, because he travels an enormous amount for work, is packing cubes.
Yes, I know. And Trini, our mutual friend, is the most amazing packer. I said to her, please come and teach me, because I watch all her travel videos. I still can't do it.
Have you just seen? She's in New York at the moment.
Yes, I know.
I was like, how did you fit all of that into your hand luggage?
How does she do it? Because I would have the same amount and have to sit on it and probably have to have 2 suitcases, and she does it in hand luggage. It's
so
unbelievable.
Impressive. Yeah,
it really is. We need actually to have a video of her giving us our own lessons.
That's such a good idea.
We really do need to do that.
Trini,
you listening? Let's go on to your next travel secret.
Yeah.
What is the most poignant travel experience you've ever had? I mean, you've told us about some amazing meals and the meanings behind those, but do you have another travel experience which is really poignant to you?
Yes, I think I mentioned Portsalon, and there's a poignancy to that because it genuinely does. You know, I was born in 1978, so my childhood holidays were in the 80s. So that was a time pre-internet, pre-smartphone, pre-cheap flights, when we would literally just pile into the car as a family. And I remember it would be quite stressful for my mother because she'd have to do all of the shopping in advance for those sort of 2 weeks that we were going. But there was something so beautiful and innocent about that. And I loved those holidays. But I think the one that I would like to choose is Tunisia. So when I was at university, you know, we got those lovely long summer holidays. And so often I would go on a backpacking expedition. The first year I went to Mexico with my friend Alice. And the second year I went with my then boyfriend, Rich, to Tunisia. And we were there for 3 weeks. And it's, again, an extraordinary country. So much interesting history, so much great food. Got me very into couscous.
Yeah, lovely.
But the reason it's poignant is because Rich, sadly, is no longer with us. And I have so many amazing memories of him from that trip. And there was one particular incident which was actually quite scary, but we got through it together. And those kind of things are very bonding. And what that was classic students. We were really relying on our Lonely Planet guide. And the Lonely Planet was our Bible. And the Lonely Planet said it would be totally fine to take our cheap little rental car into the desert and just like drive into the desert. And we had treated ourselves for one night, because we were doing it all on a budget. We treated ourselves to a slightly more expensive hotel that was in the middle of the desert.
Oh, how lovely.
And we're like, oh gosh, that sounds amazing. Let's go there. The Lonely Planet says we can drive there. It's going to take us an hour.
Stuck.
And obviously we got stuck. And actually it was terrifying because we were headed into the desert, barely any water, because we were like, the Lonely Planet said it was fine. Got 2 biscuits, I remember, in a packet. And we set off in the morning, and then the heat gets very hot very quickly. And as we were going in, a lot of 4-wheel drives were coming the other way, driven by locals saying,
Are you mad?
Don't go there. Like, we were like, they're trying to get
the
us.
Lonely Planet says we can
The
go.
Lonely Planet, exactly. The Lonely was actually fine. And then there was like about an hour's drive where we didn't see anyone, and we were following one route, I remember, and suddenly it split into several different paths that we could take, and there was no one around to ask. There were no signposts. We were like, well, let's just take this one. And then kind of half an hour into that, we got stuck in a sandbank, and there was just desert everywhere. There was nothing. And it was around midday, and I remember the car becoming too hot to touch. That's how hot it was. It must have been about 45 degrees. So the heat where you get sort of parched just by breathing in. Anyway, we were both I was panicking, and Rich had a year in the army, and he was so amazing in that particular crisis. Yeah. He was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stay in the car for the rest of the day, and when it's nightfall, that's when we'll start walking back. And we bought a rug from classic. And he was like, well, we'll shelter under the rug during the day, and then we'll walk during the night. He had it all planned out. And I was like, okay. And we had a sort of hour where we were like, this might be it. This might be it. And I thought, I'm just going to walk over that sandbank, because I bet on the other side is this luxury hotel that we've been waiting to go to.
Racist is there.
And I walked up, and it wasn't, there was just nothing. There was just more sand. And that's when I started to really get anxious. Anyway, to cut a long story short, after about an hour in the car, a 4-wheel drive just came up over the horizon. And I remember saying to Rich, don't believe it, it's a mirage. It's a mirage.
It's not someone from Zulu coming to rescue us.
No, luckily it was. It was a Tunisian couple who had hired a local guide, and they stopped for us, and they managed to get the car out of the sandbank to tow us back to safety. And they gave us an ice cold thermos of water, and I've never tasted anything so good. I've never drunk like it. It was. I mean, thank goodness they helped us, and we made it out. And so that's poignant for so many different reasons.
That's amazing.
But it's a very clear memory, and I adored Rich, and we both adored each other. And we split up in our early 20s, and shortly afterwards he went to Iraq as a freelance journalist, and he got killed by a sniper. And that was an extraordinary tragedy for his family and loved ones. And I miss him to this day. So there's an added poignancy to any memory I share with him.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I've never been to Tunisia. I love Morocco. Have you been to Morocco?
I've only been to Tangier for the day from southern Spain, got the ferry across. And that's one place I really want to explore, Marrakesh and everything. Yeah.
So we look after the Royal Mansour, which is owned by the King, which is the most beautiful hotel you've ever seen in Morocco, because it's all the best artisans from all over the country who've made everything. They've just opened in Casablanca, and they've just opened outside Tangiers. So I'm going. I haven't been yet, but apparently it's exquisite, and it's got an amazing spa there. So if you want to do a Moroccan trip to the most fabulous places, just let me know. They'd love to have you.
Thank
so
you.
really
I'd
definitely
love
do that.
Because I clearly love North Africa.
Yeah.
There's something about it that I find so compelling and historical. And I mean, I love lots of Africa, actually, I have to say.
Yeah, I love Africa too. But I mean, Africa, South Africa, and as I said, I haven't been to Tunisia, but it sounds very lovely.
Do you know what? I know I'm going back one, but another unexpected experience I had was I went to Tanzania. I won a journalism prize, and I got a travel bursary. And I'd always wanted, since I was a young child, to go and see wild animals.
Yeah.
And so I went on safari in Tanzania, but I went on my own.
Oh.
And actually, it really brought it home to me that part of the joy of travel is having someone to share it with.
Yes.
Yeah.
You didn't do the out of Africa plane with Robert Redford over the big plains.
No, the Serengeti, not yet. But I did. It's a beautiful country. Then I went to Zanzibar as well, which again was a very special island. Yeah,
very lovely. And I love South Africa. I think South Africa is fantastic.
Love South Africa. I've also been to Mali for work. I would love to go to Nigeria. I've only been to Kenya sort of as a stopover. Yeah. Again, I'd love to spend more time there.
Lots of people go to Kenya, and there's an amazing place called Peponi, which is owned by a family, and everybody goes there. Okay. And actually, Liz Earle was on her podcast, and she said, I don't even want to tell you my travel secret because I don't want everyone to go, but it is Peponi, and it's an amazing place. So
okay, good to know.
So finally, I asked you to bring a photograph.
Yes.
That sums up travel, or is an amazing photograph in the concept of travel and your life.
Yes.
Can you show us the photo and talk about it?
On my phone, Let me just find it. It's in my favourites album, obviously. And it is actually from Egypt because I think it will remain one of the greatest trips I have ever done or will do. And it was really difficult to choose one, actually, because there were so many. But I wanted to choose one that really embodied so much of how I felt and what I've been talking about. So it's this one, which is me outside the Great Pyramid at Giza. And you can't tell it's a pyramid because it's a close-up. So I'm just standing by these ancient blocks of stone that are 4,000 years old. And I'm feeling so free in that moment, which is why I'm posing the way that I am, with my arms flung open, face towards the sun. And I think it encapsulates so much of what I loved about the entire experience, which is the history, the feeling of perspective, and the reignition of wonder that this trip gave me.
I'm so happy to hear that. And it takes us wonderfully onto the last thing, which is where next and what next, because you have so many amazing projects on the horizon. So tell us.
Where next in terms of my job, or where next in terms of travel?
and your job.
Excellent. Well, very often the trips I go on make their ways into my books. So we went to Bali, was it last year or the year before last? And there's a whole scene in my new novel set in Bali, because I get very inspired by place. And so where next in terms of travel, the place that I have always wanted to go to and I've never been to is Japan.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're thinking of doing a proper Japan trip next year, where, like, hopefully if we can, we'll take a month off and sort of do it really properly. Lovely. So I'd love to do that. And where next professionally, so I'm launching a new podcast, which is a podcast masterclass under my production company, Daylight. Fantastic. And it's called How to Date. And I'm co-hosting it with Mel Schilling, who is a relationship expert who many of you will know from Married at First Sight. Yeah. And it's 8 weeks that teaches you everything you need to know about dating. Oh, wow. It helps you cope with rejection. It helps you love yourself first. It's from two people who really know. So it's me and Mel. We both met our husbands online.
Oh, did you? Interesting.
Yes. Then there's more How to Fail to come. I mean, I'm very excited about the guests we've got coming up. And then I have a new novel out this autumn. So it's a busy year.
A very busy year. And then we're sending you, I know you're going to Thailand, and we're going to send you to the peninsula in Bangkok, which is absolutely wonderful.
I cannot wait.
And then there are many other places around the world. So let me know where you want to go.
Thank you. That was so kind of you. It's been so lovely talking about travel with someone who really knows and is so passionate.
It is a joy and delight. I've enjoyed every minute. I knew I would. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.